great to be with you, and welcome to Denver. I'm glad we're in Denver and not in the Pacific Northwest, the greater Northwest area. Bishop Sally Dick and I send each other funny little comments to each other, and the other day she sent me a comment saying, gee, Grant, ever since you've been in that area, because she's a Washington girl, you've had fires, floods, and mudslides. I don't know if they're going to survive your leadership, she said. And I wrote back to her and I said, yeah, I agree, Sally. If I'm here any longer, we're going to probably fall into the ocean. It worries me, though, because General Conference in 2016 is in Portland. So all of you who are elected, beware. A couple of thank yous. One is to our GBHM staff who have really put on an excellent program and this venue. I've been around GBHM for about 25 years, maybe 30 years, and off and on in their board. And I can honestly say that this is the finest staff that I've ever experienced on higher ed staff. So we thank them for all of what they do. I also want to thank Neil Alexander, president of the publishing house, for providing copies of Spiritual Kaizen for you board chairs, and I hope it's helpful. Just as a roadmap, we are going to stay this morning. We thought instead of having a huge presentation all at once, to break it up into 3 segments. And after each segment, we'd like you to have a concentrated discussion with your Board of Ordained Ministry cabinet. So some of you are going to have to be creative because one of our Texas boards and cabinets brought everybody. So they have like 27 people. And where are you? Over there? Okay. You might have to put a couple tables together, and feel free to do that. Now, we do have some independents here, folks that have just come solo, so to speak. Some presidents. I know Laline Rector from Garrett is here. If they can join with another group and integrate them and give them that hospitality, that'd be great, okay? But we will give you plenty of time, and we'll take a break midterm so that you all have a chance to refresh yourselves. Let me start with this particular, if we could put the PowerPoint up, this particular diagram. This is how dinosaurs became extinct. Yeah, I love this because I love dinosaurs. And the metaphor is missing the boat. And the culture has changed so much around us that I don't want us to miss the boat, so to speak. And so this opening is going to talk a little bit about the changing context that we're all faced with. So I'm going to begin with a Jim Collins adage, and that is the Stockdale Principle, which is to confront the brutal facts but never lose hope. It's something that all of you know, this particular adage. It came from Admiral Stockdale, of course, whom was interned into a Vietnamese prison camp during the Vietnam War. And he noticed those that survived had this particular ethos. He said the ones that didn't make it were the naive optimists, because they said to themselves and to others that we'll be out of here by Christmas. And Christmas would come and Christmas would go, and they were still there. And then they'd say, well, we'll be out of here by the summer. And the summer would come and the summer would go, and they weren't out of there. And he said they really died of a false hope. And those that survived were able to confront the brutal facts of their situation, but never to lose hope. And I think that's what Nanette was trying to tell us today in her sermonette, to provide that sense of hope for us for the future. Now, I'd like to center us around this particular principle and confront the brutal facts in 3 ways. One is the world around us has changed dramatically, and we all know this. And in this sense, we're talking about a U.S. context, not a world context. And so we are confining ourselves to the U.S. and Europe at this point. But the Pew Research keeps getting worse when it comes to organized religion. We are now living in a post-religious institutional culture, and we can't escape that fact. The current Pew Research shows that 1 in 5 Americans has absolutely no religious preference whatsoever. They belong to nothing. Does not mean they're not spiritual or have deep longings, but they have no religious affiliation. That's 46 million Americans. And when you single out the younger people, those under 30, that number rises to 1 in 3. 32% of our young people are religiously unaffiliated. With few exceptions, these unaffiliated folks are not looking for any kind of religion in the sense of organized religion. They're not looking for our churches. Overwhelmingly, especially the young ones, think that religious organizations are too concerned with money and power, too focused on rules, and are too involved in politics. Exemplified in a youth who spoke to me last year and said, don't you, meaning the UMC, realize that no one really cares about what you're fighting over? And that was her demographic, the younger postmoderns. So we have this rise of the nuns showing no religious preference whatsoever. And that's filtered into the religious organizational scheme, the nuns. And originally, the P&W conference and the Greater Northwest was the original nun zone. We had the largest demographic of non-religious oriented people. But we've given up that title to New England, by the way, and so we gladly give that over. But as we all know, this is a phenomenon that we're all facing. Never lose hope, though. Phyllis Tickle has this wonderful example, which she shares, and that is that in the 50s and 60s, we had the people. They were coming to church. And Phyllis doesn't exactly say this, but she says that we lost them. They left the church. And the reason that they left, that I'm going to project, is that we did not engage them on their deepest spiritual longings and questions. And so they left to seek out those questions. And Phyllis says, what did they leave to find? The Age of Aquarius. She said they left to New Age religions, to other great religious truths, Buddhism, Native American spirituality, other forms. And she said the Age of Aquarius let them down. So that now we have tons of people out there who don't have a church, don't have any kind of New Age religion, and they're still hungering and seeking out that deep religious meaning. So the hope is if we can engage people on their deepest spiritual longings, we have a chance to regain their confidence. And maybe they will look to the church for this spiritual quest. Our grand narrative speaks volumes to all of us as we heard it preached today. And in the John 10:10 passage, it is that I have come to give life and have so they may have it abundantly. We know what is that deep well of faith where they will thirst no more, that in Christ we have that meaning. And if we can only share that to a greater whole that's looking for that meaning, we know, and we know the truth. So, second, confront the brutal facts. Our United Methodist Church must change and diversify. Our current UMC demographic is basically Anglo, aging, and mainstream in terms of its congregational makeup. If the average age of our UMC laity is estimated to be 58 or 59 years old, it tells us how much time we have left if we don't replace them with younger generations. I heard a great line the other day from of all people, a shuttle driver, who said he has two people in his congregation that he goes to, old people and their parents. That was a great line. I said, oh, that's our United Methodist Church. But if we look at the retention rates, everybody's suffering. Everyone is. Roman Catholic retention rates for their young people has they've lost 60% who are no longer practicing, and half remain nominally Catholic, rarely attending Mass. Evangelicals did much better through the 80s, retaining 3/4 of their children, but then they suffered this huge drop-off in 2000, falling 13% of their young people, and still dropping, by the way. We mainland Protestants suffered the greatest drop of all. For the last half century, we've lost 1/3 of our young people, left completely. And when you add to that the 20% of mainline offspring who have stopped coming to church, we Protestants have lost over half of our children. So we're bleeding for both ends of the spectrum. Our mature generations who have really formed this church and given it their resources, they're, of course, dying because of the age factor. And we don't have those future generations who are sticking around and being part of our church. But again, never lose hope. We must seek out the diversity of our mission fields all around us. Younger people, ethnic people, secular people. That's our mission field. That's who we have around us. And the average age of the U.S. population continues to grow, but it's still 35.3 years of age, a younger demographic. And if we take Hispanic population, that average age drops to 24.6. So that if we really do seek out ethnic people, the rise of our Hispanic population in this country is dramatic. We continue to increase in numbers in a good way, I believe, so that there are 54 million Latinos living in our shores, and that number continues to rise, and it will continue to rise. And we need to have ministries that outreach to them in a significant way, because now we're facing the multiple generations of Hispanic families who are fully assimilated and can come to any United Methodist Church without any language problems. Our young evangelicals are leaving their churches in droves, and what they're looking for is a more tolerant church, a more tolerant place to be. They still have a conservative theology, but it's very consistent with our Wesleyan roots. In other words, they're willing to buy Wesley hook, line, and sinker. So, in discussions with Brian McLaren, for example, he tells me that in any major city, he has 2 to 3 young evangelical pastors with their congregation who is looking to affiliate with a larger denomination. It's kind of interesting, he says, because why are they looking to affiliate? Well, they're getting older, these young evangelical pastors, and they want pension and health benefits. Isn't that interesting? Well, we got that. We got that nailed, right? Our Board of Pensions is the most healthy in the whole world. We can offer them something, but the question for us is this one, and Brian poses this: are you ready to accept them? Are your rules such that you can bring them in? Do you have the flexibility to work with them? And theologically, will you accept them? Those are big questions. Are you ready for them? And I say, of course, we've got to find a way. We've got to find new ways to infuse this life into our denomination. But that's the challenge for us, because remember, some of these young evangelicals are very conservative when it comes to some of our social issues, such as abortion. I don't know if they're going to accept our social principles around some of our big issues. But that shouldn't be the deterrent. As we're going to see, the main thing is the main thing, and that is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. So our grand narrative is when the Lord appointed that 70 or 72 and sent them out by pairs, he said, take nothing with you except your faith, of course. And he gave them the power that he had in God to do marvelous things. But then He said that harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, ask the Lord to send out laborers into the harvest. That's what our jobs are here, to find those laborers. And I was struck by Nanette's sermon today because, or homily, because it really was centered around the scarcity that we're all about. And we shouldn't be worried about scarcity. I'm struck by Brené Brown's comment about scarcity, which she uses as a metaphor. And she says the opposite of scarcity is not abundance. We often go to that level and we think of God as being the cup full, overflowing. But Brené Brown says the opposite of scarcity is not abundance, but enough. Enough. And in our world of ecological justice and disaster in some ways, we've got to look at enough. We need enough laborers for the harvest, folks. I'm struck by that illustration example of a meeting of Kurt Vonnegut Jr. With Joseph Heller. And the two authors were at this posh dinner thrown by a hedge fund operator. And Heller turns to, or Vonnegut tells Heller, you know, this guy who's hosting this party makes more money in one day than all of the books you sold in Catch-22. And Heller says, well, yeah, that's probably true, but I'll have something that he'll never have. And Vonnegut says, what's that? And Heller says, enough. We have enough to get us through. And with a mind sitting around these tables, we will find a way. My last confront the brutal facts is this. Our United Methodist and other institutional mainline response seems to me to be isolating and defending ourselves. It's this hunkering down and fortifying ourselves against the decline of the church and the sweeping changes surrounding us in society. That's our institutional response. When exactly we have to do the opposite. Instead of fortifying, isolating, we've got to open ourselves up and reach out to wherever we can to get to that mission field and to open the doors of the church and extend that ministry in wherever we find ourselves. And in our current theological wars, it's somewhat hardening into a winner-take-all battle between the twin theological extremes. And I don't know, I don't think that this body is representative of that ethos, but maybe their objective on the extremes is schism. But I believe that that is really dangerous and will destroy the church that we know of. I've used this estimate of 3 to 5% of our church may be on these extreme levels of progressivism and traditionalism. And I didn't have any scientific data to back that up, but recently UMCOM has come up with the stat that 90% of the United Methodist Church believes that any separation of our church will harm the denomination. And now we have the proof, folks, that the theological middle has spoken, and it does not believe that divisions are going to help us at all. In fact, it will hurt us. As I look around at my Episcopal and leadership colleagues in the areas that I serve, the Presbyterian Church is getting decimated. They have many national resources anymore, so they sort of closed all of their national offices. And it's a continual battle on the ground between theological forces in their church. And I think in our never lose hope, the greatness of the United Methodist Church has always been our big tent spectrum, our sense of holding together, even though we have these extremes. And as a bishop of the church, I think we must have unity as our main focus. We must be able to sit at the table with each other, and you see it daily in your work. through having candidates who represent both sides of this picture. And you must, with fairness, give them all equal opportunities to be a part of this Methodist Church. That's an important ethos of who we are. And if we lose that through division, we will no longer be the United Methodist Church that I've come to love and know. So perhaps we need a movement to a deeper tolerance and celebration of our differences. Really, that issue of celebration needs to be there, that we celebrate these extremes of our church and appropriate them in a celebratory way.